and tell you that when she asked me to jump, I said, did you ask my older colleagues to do this? Because I feel like you're picking on me because you think that my needs are a little younger. And I did not know who all was in this particular trend whatsoever. And I think that it is important that people see that we're real people. And even if that means that there's a moment to laugh, that's okay, especially since it seems like we're doing more crying than anything. But just know that we were not on the House floor jumping around.
The lawlessness of our two co-presidents has hit an all-time high in this administration, with Donald Trump constantly defying court orders and announcing that Joe Biden's pardons are null and void, while Elon Musk breaks every law imaginable to funnel billions of dollars into his companies through corruption and coercion of government employees. And now that Tesla stock is plummeting because no one wants to buy his swastika cars, he's decided he will focus on Starlink. And that Starlink company is the subject of the latest criminal act by Elon Musk that has a government official, a Trump official, getting fired because he called out Elon's crimes. And we are going to get into that all. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already, and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me now. Before we can get into this employee who was fired for calling out Musk, I want to hear a little bit of context on Starlink from Rachel Maddow.
Gutting the U.S. federal government, hurting the military, hurting our intelligence relationships, ruining our alliances, and trashing the economy. While we're busy with all of those things, there's just one other thing that kind of, I think, brings all sides of the news today together. Remember at the top I said stick a pin in that? I mentioned that there's this new reporting on the impact of what Trump and Musk are doing at the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration. Amid all these plane crashes and the crisis they are causing by firing all the people who keep the planes in the sky. At the Atlantic magazine, Isaac Stanley Becker reports on a SpaceX employee who has now been installed at the FAA, quote, to deploy equipment from Starlink across the FAA's communication network. Starlink, of course, Elon Musk's satellite internet terminals company. The directive, quote, promises to make the nation's air traffic control system dependent on Elon Musk, using equipment that experts say has not gone through strict U.S. government security and risk management review. So just put those two things together. Well, we've got, this weekend, Elon Musk threatening our ally Poland, which is more than doubling its army, talking about nuclear weapons, and preparing to be invaded by Russia. We've got Elon Musk threatening them, saying, you know, my Starlink system, my system, is what is determining the course of the war right now. So be quiet, small man. He actually said that, be quiet, small man. It's my technology, my Starlink system that is deciding the war. I'm the one. And while we've got Musk behaving that way against one of our allies when it comes to Starlink, we apparently are simultaneously giving over all U.S. airspace to Starlink as well by letting him take over U.S. air traffic control technology at the FAA, installing his own company in place of the companies that have been cleared by the FAA to provide that technology. Not to put too fine a point on it, but as noted today at The Atlantic, quote, Starlink presents many risks, said one expert. Quote, part of the risk is that Musk could simply choose to switch the devices off. If Starlink runs American airspace, because that's what Donald Trump is letting his top campaign donor do, that gives Elon Musk the ability to shut down American airspace at will. Because after all, Starlink is my Starlink system, according to him, and he can do with it what he wants. Now Donald Trump says that's what's going to run air traffic control in the United States. Seem like a good idea?
So Elon Musk is taking an agency that is already made incredibly dangerous in the FAA by demanding the mass firing of air traffic controllers by attacking those air traffic controllers, so much so that Secretary Sean Duffy called him out in that explosive cabinet meeting. But now Elon wants to take it another step further with Starlink. He wants to be in complete control of all the internet access in America. And it's the reason he got so much pushback on what was clearly a criminal act that we can see in this article right here. Trump Broadband, official exits, Commerce Department with sharp Musk warning stranding all or part of rural America with worse internet, so that he can make the world's richest man even richer, is yet another. In a long line of betrayals by Washington, a top Commerce Department official sent a blistering email to his former colleagues on his way out the door Sunday morning that the Trump administration is poised to unduly enrich Elon Musk's satellite internet company with money for rural broadband. The technology offered by Starlink Musk company is inferior. Evan Feeman wrote, who had directed the $42.5 billion broadband program for the past 3 years, Feynman's lengthy email totaling more than 100 words and shared with Politico is a sign of deep discomfort about the changes underway that will likely transform the broadband equity access and development program. Congress Secretary in crazy person Howard Lutnick recently pledged a vigorous review of BEAD with an aim to rip out what he sees as extraneous requirements and remove any preference for particular broadband technologies like fiber. Musk, who runs the Starlink satellite broadband service, stands to reap a greater share of these subsidies under the revised rules. Musk and Starlink did not respond to requests for comment. The program, created in 2021, infrastructure law program, became a source of partisan fighting last year on the campaign trail as Republicans attacked the B administration for its slow pace. No internet expansion projects have begun under BEAD money. Although some states were close at the beginning of the year, Feynman's critique in his email. Feynman notes Friday was his last day leading BEAD and that he's disappointed not to be able to see this project through the Commerce Department. Spokespeople didn't immediately respond to a request for comment on Feynman's email or the circumstances of his departure. Feynman's email warns the Trump administration could undermine BEAD, and he encourages people to fight to retain its best aspects. Fans said the administration should not change it to the benefit the technology that delivers slower speeds at higher cost to the households paying the bill, adding that this isn't what rural America congressional Republicans or Democrats, the states, or the telecom industry wants. So once again, we are seeing Elon Musk take a contract away from a company that deserves it to give it to himself, not based on merit, but because he's there. Now that seems like DE to me. This is a D contract for Elon, and it's going to put people in danger. It's going to make rural broadband slower. It's going to hurt people's ability to access the internet, use telehealth communications. This has broad impacts on people's lives, and Elon doesn't care. He is breaking the law and using the government to make himself richer. Like I said, he's focused a lot on Starlink right now because no one will buy a Tesla, no matter how cheap he can make them, with government subsidies from his buddy Donald Trump. That's the long and the short of it. And if we see Trump administration officials fighting back, I think Democrats can as well. And of course, we didn't see that from Chuck Schumer these past couple of days, but Democrats are banding together to bring in some new leadership, to bring in some new fight. And Jasmine Crockett talked about that right here.
Is a congresswoman from Texas, Jasmine Crockett. Congresswoman, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate you squeezing us in before you go to church. This has been a rough 72 hours for Democrats. I want to play some of what Democratic Senate Leader Schumer told me on The Lead on Friday about his decision to vote with the Republicans to fund the government. Take a listen.
A government shutdown gives Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Doge almost complete power as to what to close down, because they can decide what is an essential service. If they determine that SNAP kids shouldn't get food is not essential. They can just cut it out summarily. They could fire half the workers in the federal government. It would have been a far worse consequence.
So he's saying that the path that House Democrats wanted would have presented a worse consequence. Is he wrong?
He's absolutely wrong. I mean, look at the reality of the votes, right? I understand that the American people are frustrated. Please believe many of us did not sleep because we were calling and trying to impress upon the senators the importance of pushing back in this moment. And as you saw, we had all but one Democrat in the House that voted for this. So that's 212 Democrats in the House. And then you had the vast majority of senators vote for it or vote against it as well. And so the idea that Chuck Schumer is the only one that's got a brain in the room and the only one that can think through all of the pros and cons is absolutely ridiculous. And Jake, you and I both know that this administration could care less about whether or not they violate the law. We know that we've had to rely heavily upon the courts. And I want to say, as you're talking about the polling on my party, I want to say that it is the Democratic attorney generals and some governors that are standing up against this administration and bringing those lawsuits and winning every single time. They are losing in court. Could we do a better job of making sure that the American people know that we are winning in the courts? We probably could. But at the end of the day, it's still Democrats that are winning for the American people.
Some progressive groups are calling for new leadership in the Senate for Democrats. Even House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries, your leader, he was asked if he supports Schumer as leader of the Senate Democrats, and he said, next question. Do you think Senate Democrats should replace Chuck Schumer?
I think Senate Democrats have to sit down and take a look and decide whether or not Chuck Schumer is the one to lead in this moment.
You're close with Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York. Some of your fellow House Democrats say, and not just progressives, by the way, we've heard that moderates have said this too, that they're ready to support her to challenge Chuck Schumer in a Democratic primary. Would you get behind that?
That's 4 years from now. If you were asking me at least in 2 years, then I would have an absolute answer. But I can tell you that there are a lot of people that are watching his leadership in this moment. This is the moment. We don't even know what elections will look like in 4 years, if we will have elections. And so I definitely think that younger, fresher leadership may be something that many of us, not just depending on what part of the spectrum you're on, but many Americans may be looking for, especially in the state of New York.
How to take on the Republicans is a big topic of discussion among Democrats. Last week, you were one of those who participated in a Choose Your Fighter video. It got some criticism online, including Democratic Senator John Fetterman called it bizarre and reportedly mocked it in the Senate hallway. I will say that your punching looked better than some of your colleagues. Fetterman has been criticizing your party for undignified antics and a sad cavalcade of cell phones during the president's address to Congress. What's your response to Senator Fetterman?
He's not the one to talk about anything. I mean, this is a guy that doesn't seemingly want to own a suit. I'm not really sure. But I don't show up in hoodies when I'm going on the floor. And so the idea that you would say that we could not have a moment in which an influencer asked us to do this. Now, I'll be perfectly honest with you and tell you that when she asked me to jump, I said, did you ask my older colleagues to do this? Because I feel like you're picking on me because you think that my needs are a little younger. And I did not know who all was in this particular trend whatsoever. And I think that it is important that people see that we're real people. And even if that means that there's a moment to laugh, that's okay, especially since it seems like we're doing more crying than anything. But just know that we were not on the House floor jumping around at all, whereas Senator Fetterman is consistently walking around the Senate chamber, and he is walking around in such a way that they literally had to change the rules in the Senate so that he could walk around that way. So I just don't think that he's necessarily the one to actually have an opinion about this.
Let me ask you about the big news of this morning. President Trump seeking to use the Alien Enemies Act, a wartime authority, a law signed by John Adams in 1798, to deport undocumented Venezuelans that the administration say are dangerous individuals with ties to the gang Tren de Aragua. That gang is obviously associated with a lot of crime, human trafficking, drug dealing, theft, shootings, including in your state of Texas, right outside of your congressional district. Do you agree with this? And if not, what's your issue with the U.S. using any tool at its disposal to remove undocumented violent people from this country?
Well, my argument is that we already have tools that are available to remove undocumented violent people from our country. And so the idea that you want to go into a zombie law, this is kind of like what we saw in Arizona when they decided to revive a zombie law around abortion. It is the fact that we can't trust this administration to actually use a scalpel, but instead they love to use a butcher knife on things. And so giving them this wide latitude to just kind of go across and just claim that anybody is anything is wrong. And so we do have courts, we do have processes, we do have laws, and we should just go ahead and use those. There's a reason that nobody else has decided to go back until into Adam's times in order to try to find ways.
We have to be unafraid to fight back against this every day. We need to be calling out the clear, illegal actions taken by Elon Musk to enrich himself every single day. And it's what we're going to be doing on this show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.